On his 18th birthday, George Herbert Walker Bush put off his impending college education. He enlisted in the United States Navy, becoming the youngest aviator in the Navy. It was 6 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. In the following years, he flew dozens of combat missions all across the Pacific Ocean. After one such mission in 1944, his plane's engine was set ablaze by enemy fire, forcing him to bail out over the ocean. After being rescued several hours later by a U.S. submarine, Bush reportedly wondered, quote, "Why had I been spared, and what did God have in store for me?" As it turns out, God had a lot in store for George Herbert Walker Bush. He became successful in the oil business in Odessa, Texas, a U.S. congressman, the 10th ambassador to the United Nations, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, and also ambassador to China, the director of the CIA. He served 8 years as Ronald Reagan's loyal vice president, which was one of the most successful presidencies in history. And, of course, he was elected the 41st president of the United States. George H.W. Bush had one of the most notable resumes in the history of the U.S., but his personal life was even more impressive. Along with his beloved wife, Barbara, of 70-plus years, he was a parent to 6 children, including former president, a former governor. He was a grandfather to 17 and a great-grandfather to 8. Through it all, he never forgot the brave men and women in this country that protect us every single day, make everything possible, including in 2004 when he sat down for an interview with yours truly. Take a look.
You know what touches me, Sean? I admit to living in somewhat of a cocoon as a former president, but I go out of my way to say hi to these policemen and the firemen there, and I'll tell you, the ones that I talk to, we're for your son. We're for the one who whipped up the back of his lapel like that. It had a big George W. butt.
These are the same guys that tell me they watch Fox News every night.
Well, I'm sure
I meet a lot
they do.
of them too. They're good guys.
But you know, these people are not elitist country club people. They're saving our lives with their service.
Heroes.
And when they say we're for the president, I'll tell you, I get very emotional about it.
We'll have more of this interview coming up in its entirety in just a few minutes. But obviously, in both his personal and professional life, President Bush was always a good, decent, honorable person, serving his country. During his 4 years in the Oval Office, 8 years as vice president, he had to deal with some of the most challenging issues in modern American history. He saw the collapse of the Soviet Union after a successful strategy with President Reagan called Peace Through Strength. He ushered in the reunification of Germany. He constructed, literally, and conducted the first Gulf War in response to Saddam Hussein's hostile actions and attempted takeover of Kuwait. And along with his predecessor, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush transformed the country, at that time creating 21 million new jobs. It was at the time the longest period of peacetime economic growth in American history. They took the country, get this, double-digit unemployment, double-digit interest rates, inflation to amazing lows. The very same thing, by the way, that President Trump is now doing after the disaster of the Obama economy. They inherited the economy of Jimmy Carter. But of course, the Bush presidency did not go without some controversy. They all have controversy. Some criticized him for not taking out Saddam Hussein after he decimated the Iraqi army in Kuwait in a very short period of time. He was also attacked on the issue of his no new tax pledge. You might remember it was the infamous read my lips, no new tax moment. And like every Republican president since Ronald Reagan, Bush encountered a media that was actively rooting against him. And it's only gotten worse since then. Take a look.
Can you explain how you were supposed to be you're an anti-terrorist expert. Iran was officially a terrorist state. You went around telling...
Explain that, Dan. I wanted those
Mr. Vice President, the question is,
out of there.
But you made us hypocrites in the face of the world.
The president also got a chance to see a supermarket checkout scanner in action. Kind of seemed as though he'd never really seen one of those before, and the president said that he was amazed.
The Bush campaign's really been a model in how you elect somebody who even his friends think is a weak national candidate.
We find it's very steady work keeping up with Bush's lies. They do keep coming very thick and fast. Lying is something that comes to him alarmingly easily. It's something that he resorts to with, I think, a slightly worrying sort of skill.
Now, what you saw there was only the tip of the iceberg. During his re-election bid, the New York Times reported that fake story about President Bush's so-called amazement at supermarket scanning technology. They tried to paint him as out of touch. Although widely refuted, the New York Times included this fake story in its obituary of the president. Meanwhile, the so-called journalists at the AP, they couldn't hide their contempt for now the former president even passing away, tweeting, quote, George H.W. Bush, a patrician New Englander whose presidency soared with the coalition victory over Iraq and Kuwait, but then plummeted in the throes of a weak economy that led voters to turn him out of office after a single term, has died. He was 94. That tweet has since been deleted, but of course this is all part of a pattern, isn't it? The mainstream media viciously attacking any prominent Republicans, all while providing cover to all of their friends in the Democratic Party. Reagan was portrayed as a heartless monster the 8 years he was president. George Bush literally bashed for his speaking style, among other things. John McCain excoriated throughout the 2008 campaign as racist and worse. Mitt Romney called a sexist and misogynist because he wanted to hire women. Apparently, these attacks are just obviously completely disingenuous when you have the people die and all of a sudden they now like them. Like we saw with Senator McCain. Most in the mainstream media, they'll do a 180 after they excoriated him when he was running for president and treated him horribly, seemingly forgetting about their nasty coverage. A pattern to destroy people's names, their character when they're alive, and then create a veneer of bipartisanship, and then we'll say nice things about somebody when the person dies. It's so transparently phony. We've got the video evidence. Take a look.
Hi there, I'm Stephanie Rule, clearly a little broken up.
Breaking that pledge showed the character and resolve of the man to do what he was persuaded was the right thing to do economically, even though he knew at the time that it might guarantee that he would be a one-term president.
We are mourning something greater than one man in some ways. We are mourning an ideal because President George H.W. Bush was the last of the greatest generation.
Such respect for the position, the institution of the presidency.
What a special person, what a patriot, what a person of service to this country, and of just incredible decency.
And an example, too, let's praise former President Bush, who the media was never nice to. Maybe we can use that to bludgeon Trump. And when the dust of partisanship settles, history will look back on 41 as an American hero. And when his country called George H.W. Bush, he answered that call. He answered the call in the Pacific at the ripe age of 18, like so many in his generation, including my own father. He answered the halls of our nation's bureaucracy as he entered that. He answered the call as the 41st president of this country. He did it as a father, as a husband, and now answers once again to his beloved Barbara Bush in heaven after they both had an amazing 73-year marriage. Our thoughts and prayers tonight go out to the entire Bush family.